Sometimes, life throws us into challenges that seem impossible to overcome. Jenna, a loving young mother, once had it all: a happy family and a peaceful home. But in an instant, her world crumbled when she gave birth to 3 children, with a skin tone different from her own. Abandoned by her husband in the hospital, faced with threatening letters and fear that enveloped her daily, Jenna felt like she could barely stand. But Jenna didn't crumble. She chose to confront the harsh reality and rise above every barrier to protect her children, whom she loved more than life itself. A story filled with tears yet brimming with hope, love, and the unyielding power of motherhood. Don't look away, because the truth at the end will leave your heart deeply moved. In the stark white hospital room, a place meant to be filled with joy at the arrival of newborns, Jenna lay motionless on the bed, her gaze blankly fixed on the ceiling. The cries of her 3 newborns sounded like a gentle melody to the hospital staff, but to Jenna, they were piercing notes, signaling a life completely different from what she had envisioned. The door to her room suddenly swung open, and Ethan, Jenna's husband, stormed in with a furious expression. His face was flushed red, his eyes burning as they landed on Jenna. In his hand were 3 birth certificates. His gaze never strayed to the infants in the cribs, focusing solely on Jenna as if she were the root of all his anger. "Jenna, explain this!" Ethan roared, his voice sharp as a knife. Jenna struggled to sit up, her body still weak from the C-section, but her legs felt frozen under the weight of his scornful glare, the man she had once loved most in the world. "Ethan, I don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong." Jenna stammered, her eyes brimming with tears. Ethan cut her off before she could finish. He pointed toward the 3 babies lying peacefully in their cribs. "Look at them. Their skin. How do you expect me to believe they're mine? We're both white, Jenna. You betrayed me, and now you want me to accept this?" Jenna shook her head in despair, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, I swear, I don't know why." The fragmented words failed to form a satisfactory explanation for Ethan. She had no way to explain why the children looked different. The only thing she knew was that they were hers, and she had loved them from the very first moment. But Ethan had made up his mind. "No excuse you give me can change the facts. Our marriage ends here." He threw the birth certificates onto Jenna's bed and walked toward the door. "Ethan, please, don't leave me now. I need you. The kids need you." Jenna weakly called out after him, but Ethan didn't turn back. He left her with one final, cold remark. "Take care of yourself and your kids. I have no obligation to you anymore." As the door slammed shut, Jenna broke into sobs of despair. The pain washed over her like a tidal wave, drowning out any fragile hope that had just sparked. In that moment, she realized her life had changed forever. Without Ethan, without a complete family, all she had left were her 3 newborns, tiny beings who had no idea their mere existence had caused such an uproar. Amidst the piercing cries of newborns, Jenna sat in silence. Her tear-filled eyes gazed at her 3 children, her flesh and blood, yet carriers of an unexplained mystery. In her weakest and most painful moment, a small spark of resolve flickered within her heart. She couldn't afford to collapse. For her children, she would rise, no matter how fierce the storm ahead. Jenna lay motionless on the hospital bed, trying to summon every ounce of strength left to keep herself from drowning in despair. The wound from her C-section throbbed with each movement, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional devastation Ethan had inflicted. His cold gaze and cruel words echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. Beside her, the 3 newborns slept peacefully in their small crib, oblivious to the turmoil their existence had unleashed. A sudden knock at the door broke the suffocating silence. She looked up, a faint glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes that Ethan had returned. But as the door opened, it wasn't him. Instead, a hospital staff member entered, accompanied by a security guard. The uneasy expressions on their faces immediately filled Jenna with dread. "Ms. Jenna," the staff member began, her voice soft as though afraid to further hurt someone already so fragile. We thought you should know. Your husband, he left all of your belongings at the hospital entrance." Jenna felt the blood drain from her face. She frowned, confusion washing over her. "What do you mean? What belongings?" The staff member avoided her gaze, staring at the floor. He said you're on your own now. All your things have been moved outside." Those words struck Jenna like a dagger to the heart. She demanded to be taken to the entrance, ignoring the sharp pain from her wound. When she arrived, the sight before her almost brought her to her knees. Suitcases, bags, and even a baby car seat, everything she owned, lay scattered on the ground like discarded trash. Curious passersby stopped to watch, their stares piercing her pride like 1,000 needles. She hung her head, clutching her chest as though trying to hold back the tears threatening to overflow. Humiliation, betrayal, and hurt engulfed her. Jenna bit her lip, determined not to cry in front of strangers. A security guard helped her gather her belongings, but even his kindness only deepened her sense of helplessness. Back in her hospital room, Jenna picked up her phone, her trembling fingers dialing Ethan's number. The long beeps echoed, each one amplifying her despair. After several attempts, he finally answered. "Ethan, please, don't abandon me. I can't do this alone. I just gave birth. You can't leave me and the kids to face this." Jenna's voice cracked, tears choking her words as she pleaded. On the other end, Ethan's voice was cold as ice. "What do you want from me, Jenna? I left your things there. Figure it out yourself. I owe you and those kids nothing. They're not mine." His merciless words crushed Jenna like a vice. She tried to explain, to beg, but Ethan cut her off with a final callous remark before hanging up. "Don't ever call me again." The hospital room descended into a deathly silence. Jenna sat frozen, the phone slipping from her hand as her vacant eyes stared into the void. She had lost everything: the husband she had loved, the home she had built, and now even the confidence to keep going. In the chaos, Jenna called her mother, Margaret. Within 30 minutes, Margaret arrived, her face etched with worry as she took in her daughter's state. Jenna collapsed into her mother's arms, tears streaming down her face in an unrelenting flood. "I don't know what to do, Mom," Jenna sobbed, her voice thick with despair. "He's left me, taken all the money, and now I have nothing. How am I supposed to survive?" Margaret gently stroked Jenna's hair, her eyes filled with resolve. "You're not alone, Jenna. I'm here. We'll get through this together. For now, I'm taking you and the babies home. Don't worry about a thing." Margaret's words were like a flicker of light piercing through the darkness. Jenna looked at her mother, then at her 3 sleeping babies, silently vowing to herself, "For them, I will not break. No matter what comes, I will endure." Margaret's car rolled down the street, carrying Jenna and her children away from the hospital. As Jenna gazed out the window, she felt as though she was leaving her old life behind. All the beautiful memories and the painful scars. But she knew that ahead lay a new journey, one where she had to be stronger than ever before. The first days at Margaret's home were the hardest for Jenna. She not only battled the physical exhaustion from her C-section, but also faced the emotional anguish gnawing at her soul. The 3 newborns cried incessantly, and each night felt like an unending trial. Jenna found herself caught in a nightmare with no end in sight. Margaret did everything she could to support her daughter. She cared for the babies, prepared meals, and stayed close to Jenna at all times. Yet Jenna knew she couldn't let the burden rest solely on her mother's shoulders. She needed to find the strength to stand up, not just for herself, but for her children. One morning, as Jenna lay drowsily in bed, Margaret entered with a grave expression, holding an envelope in her hand. "Jenna, you need to see this," she said, her voice low but tinged with worry. Jenna frowned, sitting up to take the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, scrawled in jagged letters. "You think you can hide? I'll always find you. This is just the beginning. The words sent a chill down Jenna's spine. She looked up at her mother, her voice trembling. Mom, where did this come from? Margaret placed a reassuring hand on Jenna's shoulder. I found it in the mailbox this morning. There's no return address. Jenna felt the air in the room drain away. She stared at the letter, her mind racing for answers. Was it Ethan? Or someone else? Who could want to threaten her like this? What am I supposed to do, Mom? Jenna asked, tears welling in her eyes. I can't let my babies be caught in this. Margaret squeezed Jenna's hand gently, her gaze steady and determined. We're calling the police. If someone is watching you, they need to know we won't stand idly by. A few days later, as Jenna was trying to soothe her 3 babies to sleep, there was a knock at the door. Margaret went to answer it and found a small package sitting on the doorstep. No sender, no address. Margaret brought it inside cautiously, exchanging a worried glance with Jenna. With trembling hands, Jenna opened the package. Inside was a photograph, a picture of herself and her 3 children, taken through the living room window. On the back, a handwritten message read, I'm always watching. You can't escape. The sight made Jenna's blood run cold. The photo slipped from Jenna's trembling hands as she staggered backward, her world spinning. Mom, he's watching us. He knows where we are, Jenna whispered, her voice filled with terror. Margaret immediately locked the door and drew the curtains. We won't let him intimidate us, she said firmly. Call the police now. Jenna did as told, reporting the photo and the previous threatening letters. 2 officers arrived that afternoon, their faces serious as they listened to Jenna's account. They advised her to install security cameras and limit going out alone. We'll patrol the area more frequently, one officer assured her. But you need to be prepared. If this person is determined, they might escalate. The officer's words did little to calm Jenna's nerves. Instead, they left her feeling even more uneasy. She turned to Margaret, her eyes filled with worry. Mom, if he's gotten this close, are we really safe here? Margaret didn't answer immediately. She placed a comforting hand on Jenna's shoulder, silently promising that no matter what happened, she would stand by her daughter's side. A week later, while picking up her children from school, Jenna felt a pair of eyes watching her. Her gaze swept across the playground, but she saw nothing unusual. Trying to dismiss her paranoia, she walked toward the school gate. Suddenly, a teacher approached her, looking visibly concerned. Ms. Jenna, a stranger came by today claiming to be a relative of yours and asked to see your children. Jenna's heart stopped. What did he look like? Did he give you a name? The teacher shook her head. He didn't provide his name, but he seemed suspicious. We refused to let him in, but he waited outside the gate for quite a while before leaving. The world around Jenna seemed to tilt. She quickly gathered her children, ushered them into the car, and drove straight home. One question echoed in her mind. What does he want from us? That night, Jenna couldn't sleep. She checked the windows and locks repeatedly, her eyes fixed on the security camera monitor. The darkness outside seemed to hide countless threats. She knew her family's safety was at risk, and she couldn't sit idly by. For my children, I have to do something, Jenna whispered, her eyes blazing with determination. But little did she know, the real storm was yet to come. The next morning, Jenna awoke after a restless night. The chirping of birds in the garden seemed to promise a peaceful day, but her heart was a storm of anxiety. The threatening letters, the photo, and the stranger at the school were all warnings that she and her children weren't safe. She knew this wasn't just about fear. The man threatening her was planning something far more sinister. Jenna decided to face it head-on. She opened the box of belongings Margaret had retrieved from the hospital, the remnants of her past life that Ethan had discarded. Amid the items that had lost their meaning, an old envelope fell out. Its seal was faded, and the handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to Ethan's mother. With trembling hands, Jenna carefully opened the letter and read its contents. Ethan, my beloved son, I've always wanted to keep this secret, but perhaps one day you'll need to know. You carry mixed blood, a part of the man I loved before marrying your father. This is the truth I've feared would disrupt your life. But Ethan, this doesn't make you any less valuable. You are still the greatest pride of my life. Jenna's hands shook as she read the letter, the truth hitting her like a tidal wave. Jenna let the letter fall from her hands, her heart pounding in her chest. Everything suddenly became clear. The 3 newborns weren't the result of an affair. They carried Ethan's blood, a truth he had never known. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Yet the biggest question still hung in the air. If it wasn't Ethan, then who was threatening her? Suddenly the doorbell rang, startling Jenna. She glanced out the window, peeking through the curtain, and saw a man standing on the porch. It was Ethan. His face was gaunt, his eyes heavy with what seemed to be 1,000 unspoken words. Jenna opened the door cautiously, keeping her distance. "What are you doing here? I've made it very clear, Ethan. You're not allowed near us anymore." Ethan raised his hands in surrender, his voice hoarse. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I need to talk to you and apologize." Jenna stepped back, her eyes filled with suspicion. "Apologize? After everything you've done? You think an apology is enough?" Ethan nodded, his expression pained. "Jenna, I was wrong. I didn't know about my heritage. My mother hid it from me. I didn't know the children were mine. And now I realize how much I've hurt you and them." Ethan's admission stunned Jenna, but she quickly regained her composure. "So, you came here just to say that? After all the suffering you caused? Ethan, I don't need your apology. I need peace for me and my children." Ethan lowered his head, but then he looked up, his face serious. "Jenna, you don't understand. I'm not the one behind the threats. I came here because I think my father is involved." The room fell silent. Jenna felt her blood turn cold. "Your father? Why would he do this?" Ethan took a deep breath. "My father always resented my mother for keeping the secret about my mixed heritage. When he found out about our children's differences, he saw it as a disgrace to the family. He wants to destroy our lives to protect his so-called honor." Ethan's words struck Jenna like a lightning bolt. She shook her head, unwilling to believe what she was hearing. But then, she remembered the strange events, the letters, the photos taken through the window, and the stranger at the school. It all pointed to someone with the resources and determination to watch her from a distance. "What does he want from me, Ethan?" Jenna demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "Does he think he has the right to hurt my family?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with helplessness. "I don't know, but he won't stop. Jenna, I want to help you. It's the only way I can try to make amends for what I've done." Jenna stared at Ethan, her emotions swirling in chaos. She didn't want to forgive him, but she knew he might be her only ally against his ruthless father. That night, Jenna and Margaret decided not to let the children sleep in their own room. The entire family gathered in the living room, where security had been bolstered with newly installed cameras and locks. But Jenna couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with unrelenting worry, knowing the threat could strike at any moment. "For my children, I have to be ready for anything," she thought, her resolve hardening as the night stretched. Around midnight, the blaring alarm from the security system jolted everyone awake. Jenna rushed to the monitor and saw a shadowy figure lurking in the yard. "Ethan!" Jenna shouted, calling him from the living room. Ethan, who had agreed to stay and help protect the family, ran out, gripping a baseball bat. Ethan sprinted into the yard, but the figure had already disappeared. He searched the area while Jenna called the police. When they arrived, they discovered a note left on the front step. "This isn't over. I'll be back." Jenna clutched her 3 children tightly, her heart pounding with fear, but also filled with determination. She looked at Ethan, then at Margaret. "We won't let him win. Whatever it takes, I will protect my family." 2 days after the alarming night, Jenna still couldn't shake the lingering fear. Although the police promised regular patrols, she knew it wouldn't be enough to stop the relentless threat looming over her family. She felt like she was stuck in quicksand, with each step dragging her deeper into uncertainty. But today, she resolved to take control and stop living in fear. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a knock on the door interrupted the fragile calm. Jenna froze, a familiar sense of danger washing over her. She signaled Margaret to stay with the children while she cautiously approached the door, gripping a small bat. Peering through the peephole, she saw a tall man, his face partially obscured in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Standing before her was Ethan's father, Edward. His presence was commanding, with sharp eyes that exuded authority and malice. He smirked, his expression sending a chill down Jenna's spine. "We need to talk, young lady," Edward said, his deep voice tinged with menace. "You have nothing to say to me," Jenna replied, her tone firmer than she felt inside. "Leave now, or I'll call the police." Edward chuckled coldly. "The police? Do you think I'm afraid? I only want to talk just once. After that, I'll be gone, if you do exactly as I say." Jenna hesitated but knew from his piercing gaze that he wasn't here to negotiate. She let him step into the living room but positioned herself to block access to Margaret and the children. "You've disgraced my family," Edward declared bluntly, his eyes blazing with fury. "You were never worthy of entering the Edward household. And now, you've made things worse by keeping those children." Jenna clenched her fists, fighting back a wave of anger. "They are your grandchildren. They are Ethan's children. How can you deny that?" Edward let out a cold laugh. "Grandchildren. Children with blood I will never accept. I made Ethan leave you to protect this family. But you're stubborn, insisting on keeping them, forcing this mess to continue." Jenna looked at him, her voice steady and firm. "Do you really think your words can make me give up on them? You don't understand anything about a mother's love." Edward stood, stepping closer to Jenna, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "If you want to protect them, leave this place forever. Never let them carry the Edward name. If you do as I say, I'll leave you alone." Jenna stared directly into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of fear behind his icy glare. "You can't force me to abandon my family. I'm not afraid of you, Edward. I will protect my children, no matter what you try to do." Edward smirked, but before he could respond, a voice interrupted from behind him. "Father, that's enough!" Ethan stepped into the room, his face burning with anger. He locked eyes with Edward, and for the first time, there was no hesitation or fear. "Father, stop this. You destroyed my mother's life, and now you're trying to do the same to my family." Edward turned to face Ethan, shock evident in his expression. "You're siding with them, Ethan? Can't you see? They disgrace this family." Ethan stepped closer, standing toe-to-toe with his father. "No, you're wrong. You are the one disgracing this family. I hurt Jenna. I hurt my children because I listened to you, but I won't let that happen again." Edward's gaze wavered, caught between anger and disappointment. He turned to Jenna one last time. "Remember this, girl. You will never be accepted in this family." Then he walked out, leaving a heavy silence hanging in the air. Ethan turned to Jenna, his eyes filled with regret. "Jenna, I know I don't deserve you or our children, but I will do everything I can to protect you from him." Jenna looked at Ethan, her emotions swirling inside her. Taking a deep breath, she said, "I don't need your protection. But if you're truly sorry, do the right thing. Keep him away from my family." After that day, Edward never appeared again. Ethan kept his promise, ensuring that his father could no longer interfere with Jenna and their children's lives. Jenna knew the battle had not been easy, but she had triumphed with strength and resolve. Not just protecting her family, but also reclaiming her confidence and courage. On a sunny morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows, Jenna watched her 3 children playing on the floor. She smiled, feeling true peace for the first time in a long while. She knew the future would still bring challenges, but now she was ready to face them all. Life can try to drown you, Jenna thought, but as long as you don't give up, you'll always find the light. Jenna's story is one of pain and heartbreak, but also of hope and resilience. If her journey has touched your heart, please share this message of strength and love. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories, where courage and love inspire and move us all.